Hello. Hello, LinkedIn. Hey, friends. Thanks for joining.
Hello,
Give
everyone.
everybody a couple minutes. Hey, Jericho. Hey, Lisa. Awesome to see everyone here.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us to talk about GA4. What does this mean? What does it all mean? We're about to find out. And thank you to my guest, Jorge Castro from Octopus.
thank you, Nora. Nice being here. Hello, everyone.
Jorge, while everyone's joining us, do you want to talk a little about Octopus, about your agency and what you guys do? And then we can get into the subject du jour, which is the GA4 switchover.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Octopus is an SEO agency based in Cancun, Mexico. We have like around 10 years, almost 10 years in the market, and we have been serving clients from across a whole bunch of industries, from CPG products, e-commerce, medicine, hospitals, stuff like that. We're mainly based, or our mainly focus is SEO, making and building SEO websites or SEO friendly websites, trying to get to the first positions. And obviously, if you do digital marketing, we have an area specialized in digital analytics, right? So Google Analytics Universal, Google Analytics 4 with this change, Google Tag Manager, reports, building out reports and trying to make sure that every single step of the funnel is covered around the strategy. We mainly do SEO, as I said, but we do also PPC, specifically Google Ads and Meta Ads, and email marketing. So we try to get to every single part of the funnel, right?
Yeah, the funnel is super important. And I talk to my clients about that as a growth strategist. Like, it's not enough to just get people into the funnel. You have to move them all the way through. You have to give them an action to take. You have to have multiple touch points. Like, I don't know what you're seeing, Jorge, on your side, but when I used to work on the agency side, like, going back a couple years now, I've been consulting on my own, but we would always say at least 7 to 10 touch points and sometimes more in order to get a conversion all the way through the funnel. So what are you seeing now when you're working with clients full funnel? How many touch points are necessary to get people through to all the way to conversion?
I will say the same, 7 to 10 at least. It depends, right? Because if you do a long funnel strategy because you have a product that is not purchased on the first time, that a lot of our clients are B2B clients, right? So you connect to a company and then you reconnect and you stay within their top of mind. And then afterwards you will get a connection or maybe an email and move forward into the funnel. Then you will have to have more than 10, more than 15 different touch points, right? And that's where email marketing, for example, comes from, right? You send email messages and you stay on the top of mind. So when they need something, they will get it to you. So like for e-commerce products, we have a lot of clients that are e-commerce based and CPG products. You can even do less, 3, 5, 6. But if you are in B2B business, well, this is going to be a long race. And if you do it correctly, it will pay off. It will completely pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the same thing. The higher the value of the service or the product, the more expensive, the longer the sales cycle tends to be. So coming from the agency world, as I did also, and same as you, like selling high value services, high cost services is usually a longer sales cycle. That could sometimes be weeks, months, years even, sometimes that relationship that you're building with somebody over time, they have to know, like, and trust you before they're going to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars with you. So that's a relationship you don't build over 2 or 3 touch points. That's built over many, many touch points. So yeah, the higher the value of the service or the product, the more expensive, the more touch points you're probably going to have versus like, a cup or a soda or a candy bar or something like that.
And with those clients, with those kind of clients that are B2B, I believe that waiting until the sale is not enough, right? So you need to keep in touch. Even that the client is already there, you have to make that client an advocate and you make that client like stay with you for a longer period. So the funnel it doesn't stop on the sale or on the purchase. It will continue to follow up. And obviously, if you have a good funnel, then you can make that client to recommend you to others, and then you can get more value out of that client, not specifically selling to him, right?
Exactly. So let's talk about the subject of the day, Google Analytics 4. The countdown is on. T minus, what are we now?
1 day.
3 days?
Yeah, like I just received an email earlier today, like you have 1 day and 12 hours, something like that. So yeah, Google Analytics 4 is coming. And Google wants
coming and it can't be stopped.
Exactly. And Google wants us to be aware of that. So we are T minus 1 day. July 1st is a change. It's going to be at the day where Google Analytics 3 or Universal Analytics will stop recollecting data. And then if you have a GA4 account, well, you have to rely on that one to get the information you need.
So what does that mean practically, Jorge, we probably have a mixed crowd listening in terms of people who have already done their switch over a long time ago. I think you've been able to switch now for a year or almost a year, right? But it's been a slow rollout. Of course, we talked about this when we were planning for this call. Like, are you the kind of person that does Christmas in July and buys all of your presents as you see the sales throughout the year and stuffs them in a closet? Or are you the kind of person that waits until December 24th to buy your Christmas presents? Because if you're the latter, then maybe you haven't switched over, and that's okay. But what's going to happen after Saturday, after July 1st, if you haven't done the switch over to GA4? Practically, what will happen to people? Sort of does anyone remember Y2K where we were all like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I was there actually. Yeah. So what's going to happen on July 4 and July 1? So on Monday, maybe Wednesday, because of the holiday in the States, on Wednesday, you will get to your job. You will get to your Google Analytics, open it up, and you will see everything empty. So at least since the Saturday from that moment on, everything like Google Analytics will not be getting new data out of your website. No? So acquisition channels, average order value, enhanced e-commerce, events, objectives, etc. Every single piece of information that you have seen in Google Analytics for the past, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, it will be gone. You will still be able to see earlier information. So all June, all May, or April this year and earlier, but any new information won't be getting recollected. That is what it means.
So you will see your old data, your back data, but you won't see any new data being collected. So what step, if people have done this migration or are planning to do it themselves, how do they migrate to GA4? What is the step they need? What button do they need to press? What website do they need to go to? How do they get signed on to GA4 so that when they go to their dashboard on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, depending if you celebrate the holiday or not, how do they get to GA4? And then what happens? Because we're always comparing one data set to another, right? We're looking week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. If the old data was in Universal Analytics or GA3, how are you going to get that data into the new dashboard for GA4? First of all, how are you just going to get into the GA4 dashboard, period? And then once you're there, how do you get your old stuff to migrate over so you can compare it to the new stuff that's coming in?
Okay, that's a great question, and those are actually a couple of great questions. But before I answer them, I also need to say that I have a lot of clients that when I told them this, you won't get any new data. They are like, oh, okay, I don't even use Google Analytics as a data source, right? The issue is that even if you don't use it, and you should, I believe you should. For example, your Google Ads account are normally linked to Google Analytics. So those Google Ads accounts and those Google Ad campaigns will stop receiving data that will optimize them, that is normally optimizing them to get conversions. So even if you don't use a lot of Google Analytics, well, a lot of platforms that you normally use to do campaigns will stop getting the data also, and that's where the cookie crumbles, right? ad spend will skyrocket or it will stop completely because you don't have any new information. Google Ads, in this case, won't have any new information to know what kind of campaigns and what kind of keywords are making the actual conversions that your business needs, right? So, yeah, even if you don't use Google Analytics on a daily basis, your platforms are using it. And from July 1, those platforms will rely on something else. So that something else is Google Analytics 4. Has been launched for maybe a year now. And yes, as you said, we have been given a lot of time to do the migration, but there are always the persons like you said, right? Like just purchase the gifts on the last possible day. So first of all, that data migration won't be able. If you haven't been recollecting data in Google Analytics 4, you won't be able to actually compare it to the previous data in an easy way. Why? Because Google Analytics 4 changes the data event model, right? Google Analytics Universal was based on sessions. So when a user enters a website and kick off a session, I'll start recording it and start tracking him with whatever he does on the website. Google Analytics 4 uses events as an event. It's an event model. It's an event-based model. So instead of triggering a session, you are triggering an event called page view. And every single thing that you do, the scroll, for example, the scroll is now an event. User scroll, page view, item view, product view, etc., etc., etc. So the way that Google Analytics 4 is taking in the data is different. So that's why you cannot...
comparing apples to oranges is what you're saying.
Yes. It is normal for us. We have had, like, for the past 3 or 4 or maybe 6 months, websites having both Google Analytics 4 and Google Analytics Universal. And it is normal for us to see even 10%, 15%, 20% difference between the data that it shows. Also because even though you can activate a couple of options in Google Analytics Universal to try to mitigate the impact of robots and stuff like that, in Google Analytics 4, a lot of that is AI driven. So it's making data driven models to make more accurate decisions in channel attribution, in customer attribution, and also filtering out spiders, robots, stuff like that. So if Google will have like let that migration come over so simple, then you will be comparing stuff that it doesn't make sense to compare, right? There are a couple of options. You can connect. Actually, we have a service that connects Google Analytics Universal to a data warehouse where you have a warehousing. You dump the data of Google Analytics in a database. You dump the new data that is on Google Analytics 4, and through some models, we can have quite of a comparison, right? But it is not a simple one, and you have to take it like with warnings on what are you comparing and how are you comparing to, right? So the best way to do this was to do the change 6 months ago. Sadly, if you haven't, then you will have you can do the data warehousing if you have a lot of data, but if not, you will be downloading a lot of Excel files to try to compare what's going on between right now and last year, for example.
Interesting. So why did Google do this? You started to hint at it a little bit with the AI piece of things, but what was the reason and rationale for this switchover? And what are some of the new features of GA4 that are kind of going to advance the data analytics practice for companies? That's your world. So tell me, what are some of the advantages of the new world that's coming with GA4?
Well, actually, what is coming with GA4 is actually an update for the world we're already living, right? So Google Analytics 3 has, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And since iOS 14, where we have this acceptance of cookies and acceptance of tracking in our mobile phones, a lot of has changed for us as digital marketeers, right? So we lost a lot of data from one day to another. Now we have GDPR. In Europe, we have the CCPA, the California Privacy Act, I believe. We have a lot of acts and a lot of laws targeting PII because eventually someone needed to. So we are moving into, for the past year and a half, to a cookieless world where a lot of users don't give us their permission to track. No? And so Google Analytics 4 is actually building up to that and building up to the standard to have a cookieless world where we can track without messing with anything about PII, without like even if we don't have a cookie, and this doesn't mean to not have the permission of the user. Obviously, if we have the permission, we won't track it. But for example, it wasn't quite as simple to stop a tracker in Google Analytics Universal as it is right now with Google Analytics 4. Right now, we have more things implemented to stop that tracking if the user doesn't want us to track. Also, with the whole launch of AI and ChatGPT and stuff like that, for example, we have now a data-driven model to attribute conversions to different channels that is all based on AI. We have like the questions that we can ask to Google Analytics 4. We can get the same information in Universal Analytics, but right now we can ask the actual question in plain English, right? So I want to know the engagement rate of the users that come from California using a tablet. And Google Analytics 4 will give us the information without us needing to build a custom report for it. So we are advancing on those sites. I believe it's the future. I believe it is a better way to track. It has a lot of advantages. We are getting rid of a lot of measurements or metrics that aren't quite nice or aren't quite adequate for the world we live in, right? When Google Analytics was launched, there was no such thing as multi-device tracking, for example. And we have been living in that world where you have a multi-display life, where you are seeing Netflix or seeing Fox or seeing whatever on your TV, and you have your cell phone and you have your laptop. And then how can I track if a user bumps out of those channels, of those devices, right? So it's more use, or it's more complete for the world we're living in for the past year and for the world we are going to live in, at least as digital marketeers, and also as a consumer for the the years to come.
So what about people who are concerned about tracking and privacy in general? Can they opt out of being tracked by GA4 or not? Like, is it going to track you regardless? Like, what about privacy concerns?
No, you can, as always, you can opt out of the tracking. It is more, since the laws are different in different countries and different parts of the world. It is more, I believe Google Analytics 4 gives us the advantage to respect the law in a more practical way, right? So even if you need to do an opt-in or you do an opt-out, we can change how Google Analytics 4 is set up to honor that, right? We have a lot of, like, for example, in Google Analytics 3, you normally set it up doing a copy and paste of a JavaScript code on the website. And now we implement Google Analytics 4 through GTM, normally through Google Tag Manager. So what that means is like, and I can control every single launch of a tag, right? So even if you, for example, you can give me access for cookies that are personal information for, let's leave it like that, personal information, but you aren't agreeing on, for example, me using your data to show you ads, right? So I can have those tags launching and the other ones doesn't, like stopping.
So there's more customization, like more ability to opt in or opt out, as it were.
Exactly. I don't know if you have seen when you enter a website and ask you for cookies, you have like 4 or 5 different options. When now we can actually like honor it And I'm not saying that we couldn't with Google Analytics Universal. With Universal Analytics, what I'm saying is that it is more practical for us as digital marketeer to set everything in a more fast, in a more quicker way. And again, just give you the information that you need as a business, right? If you want to, for example, we have new pixels going on. We have new, maybe you want to do a custom landing page where with Google Analytics, with Universal Analytics, normally you will have to have a developer to set some custom events in the website so we can track everything. Now we can just set it up through Google Tag Manager to Google Analytics 4 as an event for a click, and that's it. And it's just as easy as to put an exception. So if the user isn't consenting for us to track, well, we won't. That's it. Like, I don't want to do a deep dive in a technical part. Maybe we can do that in another session. But it is more easy. It is more practical. And again, us as a business, well, we should be going into the data-driven world, right? Like, we should be taking into consideration the data that Google Analytics can provide to do changes. So being faster in implementing those changes will eventually mean a faster reaction to the business ecosystem and eventually revenue, I hope.
So Jorge, of your clients that you helped transition to GA4 a while ago, some people, right, are those last minute, sliding in at the last minute. But for those that did make the transition 3, 6, 9, 12 months ago, like, how has it been going? Like, what are you seeing now in the data that you weren't seeing before? And like, how has it changed Octopus's practice of delivering on your SEO and, PPC campaigns? Like, what are you seeing as sort of the difference? Like we said, apples to oranges. Like, how has that shift been? Like, what are you seeing now that you didn't see before?
Eventually, everything was able or was permitted using Google Universal Analytics, the last version, Google Analytics 3. We were able to do everything. But what are we seeing, like, specifically is timing. So for these specific lines that already have everything implemented, and I want to talk about implementation in a little bit because it has been a challenge for everyone. After you have everything implemented, if you need a change, we can do it so much quickly. We can respond faster to whatever needs. And obviously, if we can respond faster, then someone that is doing Google Ads campaigns, for example, can ask us for, hey, what do you think about this landing page change? Right now, we can set new events and new objectives for that specific landing page so much faster than we were able in Google Analytics Universal. So in the data world, we are seeing the same because eventually it was needed for us to put those events and those objectives. But instead of going through the developer and asking for someone at the website to do the change, to do a custom class, etc., so we can put the event in and create the objective in Google Analytics Universal and stuff like that, where we are more capable of doing it just through GTM, and that's it. And we can provide faster and more reliable information, right?
Interesting. So through Tag Manager, you're able to do a lot more kind of natively in Tag Manager than you were able to do before GA4, where it was a more manual process. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes, completely. Anyhow, like right now, Google Analytics 4 was built after Google Tag Manager was in place. Google Tag Manager get into place because us as a website have a lot of tags, right? So right now you have Facebook tags, Pinterest tags, Twitter tags, etc., etc., etc. Then they created a tool that let us manage those tags, and then they revamped their original tool of Google of Analytics to use that one specifically. So then everything works better or seamlessly.
Interesting. Yes. I love that. Yeah, so let's talk about implementation because I know you said you wanted to get to that. And by the way, just like a bit of housekeeping for anyone that's listening in our audience. First of all, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you all here. And if you have questions for Jorge, I would say for Jorge, not for me, because I'm sort of like the nincompoop when it comes to GA4. I'm just the host of this show. I'm asking the questions as someone who doesn't really know that much about this, but what I'm saying here is there are no stupid questions. So if you're in the audience listening and you would like to ask Jorge a question about your GA4 transition that's already in progress or maybe possibly isn't underway just yet, that's fine. There's no shame here. This is a safe space to talk about what we're doing with GA4. So the way this works is kind of like if you haven't been on a LinkedIn Live audio before, there's buttons at the bottom of your screen where you can raise your hand. So if you want to come up on stage with Jorge and I and ask a question, use the little button that says raise your hand, and then we will bring you up, and then you can unmute yourself. Unfortunately, I, as host, or Jorge, can't unmute for you. That's kind of silly, but there's a little button on the bottom right that says mute. So once you come up on stage to ask your question, you just have to go ahead and unmute yourself. But if anyone wants to raise their hand, go right ahead. But Jorge, tell us a little bit about implementation. What should we be thinking about as it relates to implementing GA4?
Sure. So what's going on with the implementation of Google Analytics 4? Sadly, or the bad part about it is, I believe, or at least for us as an agency, or has been, the implementation side. Because when you wanted to implement Google Analytics 3 or Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, you normally just copy and paste a little JavaScript code into your site, and that's it, right? The good part about Google Analytics 4 is all the personalization that you can have, the customization, the things that you can actually set up every single event that you want. And that creates a challenge for the implementation, right? Because now, even though you still need to copy and paste a custom code into your site, and it will start recopiling data or recollecting data as soon as you do it, that will give you only like standard reports and standard information, channels, acquisition, stuff like that, right? If you want to get e-commerce, for example, and if you are in WooCommerce, there are a couple of plugins that can do it. It is not as simpler as in Universal Analytics, but you can do it. Shopify, for example, just launched their Google Analytics 4 integration like a couple of months ago, right? Before that integration was there, you have to set it up everything manually, right? I'm not sure about Magento and other like BigCommerce and other e-commerce platforms. So how are they doing with the Shopify integration, with their Google Analytics 4 integration? But normally you will have to do it by hand. Even though like Universal Analytics, where you have a couple of things to do after you set it up, well, now with Google Analytics 4, you have a lot of things to do to set it up correctly. Again, if you just want your traffic, well, copy and paste it, do it in Tag Manager, and that's it. But if you want to have custom events, for example, where a lot of these B2B businesses we were talking about, they don't do e-commerce. So we need to track whenever a person downloads a file or sends a form, for example. Those kind of configurations now are set up manually, right? So that's the tricky part about the implementation. Also, like for example, in Google, in Universal Analytics, you have almost 33 standard reports. Well, in Google Analytics 4, you have 8. So even though there is a couple of information, those 8 that is going to be valuable for you, a lot of the reports that you need and your business needs are going to be custom made. You can do that inside of Google Analytics 4. There is a Explore tab where you can create your custom reports, and you have a lot of different ways of personalizing them. I love that. I love the interface for Google for the new version. But if you are not used to creating that kind of things, if you don't have that structured mind to know if you do 1 or 2 or 3 timelines or events or stuff like that, when you're gonna have a rough time over there, right? Again, the great thing about Google Analytics 4 is customization. That's also one of the hardest things to grasp, right? You have to customize almost everything. It's great. Again, I'm not trying to say, and I don't want the audience to feel like this is so much complicated. It won't, and it isn't. We have clients that they are building reports like top of the funnel reports, middle of the funnel reports, bottom of the funnel reports that are specifically custom made for their needs and their websites. And in a long run, it's going to be more simpler. It's going to be more simply to get the information that you need. But then again, there's someone needed to build those reports and to get the information that you want.
So have you seen either more demand then? Has Octopus seen more demand for either training your clients on how to build and manage the custom reports, or have you been getting more requests to help clients integrate and create custom reports? Like, has it changed your workflow as an agency to either be training your clients or doing more of this reporting, custom reporting for them?
We normally kind of work with, I'm going to say medium to big companies. So they normally rely on more advanced stuff or more advanced reporting like Tableau, Looker Studio, Power BI and stuff like that. So we are building quite a lot of custom reports in GA4, but of course we have been building it, right? We normally, what have changed a lot is for us to build it, to build it and train our clients on how to use it. I can't think of a client right now that have asked us to show them how to build the reports, right? Because normally that's why we are here.
Yeah. But you could, I guess, in theory, like you said, if someone wanted to learn how to create and build their own reports, I guess that could be an interesting content series for you all to create, if someone wanted to take your workshop on how to create themselves. Because I think we have a mix here of people in this audience that work for larger companies, smaller companies. A lot of small businesses can't always afford to have an agency doing all of the reporting or all of the creating for them. They have to learn how to create on their own. So I think it's an interesting way to think about it, is how, when you make a big shift like this in software, where does that leave small businesses and small business owners, which of course is the world that I'm playing in and spending a lot of time in now, working founder to founder? Like, is this something that you could train and coach small business owners on how to make the migration or the shift from sort of that more standardized reporting to the new custom reporting that might need to be set up to get the data they need about their business?
Yes, absolutely. Like we can train a lot of people. Like we can train everyone to create the reports and to how to build the reports in GA4. But honestly, I will suggest, like, for small business owners, creating a report in the digital world, it is not that hard. What is hard is to get information and get insights out of those reports, right? So, for example, with a couple of our small business as clients that we have, we normally ask them, instead of trying to build your report, please let me know what information do you need? What are you expecting out of your report, right? As a founder, obviously, you have a lot of things on your plate. You are building 10 different houses at the same time. How can I deliver the more insightful information or the more actionable information for you in the quicker way possible, right? So what we have seen is we had a client a couple of months ago that he wanted like this really, really custom, intricate, like complex report built out, like 10 different reports from 10 different people. And before we code them, we stopped for a second and said, hey, I just want to know how are you going to use that information? Who is taking decisions out of this information? Obviously, the client responded something like, oh, we don't know yet. We just need to know this stuff. Okay. What kind of information, like what kind of decisions you want? If I know the decisions that you are trying to make, I can deliver a better insights and better information specifically tailor made for those decisions, right? So again, we can train everyone. Like there are a lot of courses out there. The issue is that when you are trying to create a report that is really, really, really deep down and complex, then you will end up with nothing actionable, nothing like where you can actually tweak something and get revenue and get sales or get visitors or something that your business needs, right? So most of the times a report that only has 2, maybe 3 graphs, that is like, this is your average order value, this is your conversion rate, this is your number of sessions, this is your total rates, and this is how your channels are assisting conversions. Well, with those 5 numbers, 6 numbers, we can see all of your funnel, how is it performing, and maybe even getting 2 or 3 insights that actually are going to be more impactful on your business. I believe a lot of big clients create, like a lot of small clients want to create these complex reports because they are seeing big clients doing it. And if you access to Google and say GA4 template, you will see this really, really deep dive into reports. And that's because there is a team that is specialized in moving one number specifically. And a small business owner, normally you will be responsible for a lot of numbers. Maybe it's better if we select those numbers to actually make your actions impactful for the business.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like at my last agency that I spent almost a decade at, we had this sort of visual, if anyone, I know we're on an audio event, but if anyone's a visual thinker, like we would think of like cogs in a machine. You know how some are smaller and some are bigger. So if you think of a bunch of smaller cogs turning a bigger wheel, like if the largest wheel is what you want to get to turn, that would be your business metrics, your sales, your share, your penetration, your, the revenue number, the profitability number, like the business metrics. Like we would ask this question of our clients, what do you want to achieve and by when? And it was unbelievable how many people couldn't answer that question right off the bat, because they'd say, we want more awareness, we want more impressions. It's like, no, but don't you want more money? Like money, that number, that business metric is the ultimate cog in the machine. All of the other things are KPIs, key performance indicators, the clicks, the likes, the shares, your cost per click, your cost per conversion, your page views, all of these little pieces are smaller cogs that are turning the bigger cogs. So you have your campaign metrics and KPIs, your social metrics, your digital metrics, your, all of those pieces are actually just little cogs turning the bigger cog, which is your revenue number, your profit margin, your share, your household pen. So I think in this situation, sometimes like we can get hung up on the KPIs and achieving a particular KPI, like for awareness or, for conversion. But even some of those conversions aren't adding to your ultimate bottom line, which is your growth, right? So I think to your point, sometimes it's a good time to stop and pause and reevaluate, like, what are we actually trying to achieve here and by when? And what are the different things that we can put in place to help us achieve that goal? And also, how can we measure if we are achieving that goal or how far we are along towards achieving? And if we're seeing something break down in that funnel, there's some sort of like pause or blockage in that funnel. Like people are getting stuck here. Like they're not completing the conversion. Like, when sites are loading slowly and people get fed up and they just opt out, well, then they didn't stay on your site long enough to complete whatever conversion you had in mind for them there. So that's a problem with your website, page load speed, that if you only address that, you might be able to stop that block in your funnel. So I think like it is important, like you said, to sort of back up and think about like, what is the main goal here that we're trying to achieve? And then how can some of those KPIs and really like some of the tactics and channels and platforms help us achieve that ultimate metric?
Of course, of course. You cannot think in this day and age. You cannot think as a marketing strategy that is isolated for everything else, right? So if you do digital marketing, it's going to be part of or should be part of a marketing plan, right? For a 360 marketing plan. Even if you decide that you aren't doing TV or radio, stuff like that, because that's not where your buyer persona is, it has to be part of a plan. And again, if you cannot see digital marketing something as a loner over there, where, well, you cannot see neither the digital channels like as separate, right? Every single channel is assisting a conversion or should be assisting a conversion or should be doing something for your business. So you have to have this quick overview as a report where you can see every single channel. I call them key metrics, right? So where you can see the key metrics across your channels, across your different steps of the funnel, across your different steps of your sales funnel, not only your acquisition funnels, and then use that specific report to make the changes on the drill down metrics that should be made. Right? That specific thing that you were talking about is exactly why we normally don't train in building the report, because once you know what to do and how to do it, well, they normally build these complex and really, really big reports and don't provide any insights. And again, the digital analytics world is not a world where you see numbers, it's where you see actions, right? Those numbers, just as a number, don't create anything else. Like you and me can enter into a Google Analytics account, into a Google Analytics 4 account, and see the same number and take different actions, specifically tailored for different clients that will make revenue growth, opportunities, etc. Right? So that has, like, even though that was one of the main focus of Google Analytics 4, trying to make reports that are more built into the customer, for example, like into the user of the platform. I believe that's why they integrated AI. They integrated like a lot of what's my conversion rate, what's my conversational speaking questions, so you can get the information that you need for your business. The challenge here for a lot of us has been doing the change, right? Like the implementation, doing like, even now that I have been using Google Analytics 4 for the past year and maybe a little bit more, and I'm still not used to where the reports are and how to build it, and because I'm used to Google Analytics 3, and that's something that is going to change in the following 3 days.
It's like if you are a skier or snowboarder, if you switched, it's like how to get down the mountain, but you're going in a totally different direction and on a totally different piece of equipment. So, you're going to fall down a little bit. It's okay. Exactly.
And there are a lot of for example, settings that Google Analytics 3 didn't have, or at least to my knowledge didn't have. Now Google Analytics 4 has. You can now select how long you want the data to be in the platform, right? The specifically certain types of data. Now you can select, you can see a real time, the booger view on how the events are launching, to see if you are actually tracking correctly. You can see event names more quickly and more simpler. So yeah, there are things that you just need to learn. And also Google Analytics 4 is used not only for websites, but also for apps, right? So you can have your app and your website in a single Google Analytics 4 view. So there are a lot of changes over there that we will still be rolling out in the following months, I think, and the following years, that will, again, as I said, move forward to the world we are living in, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting, the point about the app and the website having the data in the same place, because they correlate to each other. I mean, I think you made a point earlier, Jorge, to go back to, which is that data is contextual. Like if we just went diving into somebody's data set, but didn't have context for like what is good or not good in their particular category, industry, line of business, or how they did year over year or quarter over quarter. We couldn't look at that data and ascribe that's good, that's bad. Like unless you're talking about industry benchmarks, you could compare like, oh, how are we doing versus a benchmark of the industry? But even that's contextual, right? Like you have to know what that benchmark is to compare and say, like, where do we sit relative to our peers in our same industry? Or where do we sit relative to ourselves last year, last quarter? So data is always contextual. And when you're somebody that is a business analyst, a data analyst, a business strategist, looking at data and trying to make inferences, like there's always an intuitive leap that must be made to get from data to insights. Like there's like, we got to take a leap, right? Because like the data isn't just going to tell us the insight, and not yet, at least. Like maybe with the advancements of AI, soon we'll be able to have, AI read the report and give us all the insights without us having to think about it. But still, there's a reason for humans and the human brain to look at those data sets and say, what I infer from this is we can make this change and we could try to go in this direction next and optimize what we've got in order to get a better result. So yeah, maybe speak to that a little bit, just like how data is contextual and how just having the data alone is not enough.
Of course, as I say to my students all the time, like I can show you how to use the tool, but if you are here to learn to use the tool, to go to a YouTube video, actually, because there's going to be more updated versions than what I can say right now, right? What I'm trying to teach you or what I'm trying to show you is what kind of questions you should ask. What kind of questions are actually going to make an impact on your business? Because as you said, everything is contextual. We have seen SEO for the past month took over 80% of customer acquisition. Is that good or bad? Well, I'm an SEO agency, so that should be good. But what I have seen, for example, I have some examples where that specific month, a client just really, their ad spend took a dive. So even though I'm taking the 80% of the customer acquisition, it is not actually my responsibility. It's just that the other channel was turned off, apparently, right? So what kind of information do you need to take the decisions that the business needs, right? That's why we have data analysts, right? That's why we normally, like when we work with a client, closely with a client, we normally ask questions, and a lot of times the client goes like, why do you want to know that? And I'm like, because I needed to know to get the context of the information, right? To get the context out. Like we had a client a couple of years ago where suddenly out of the blue, we lost in a month like 80% of sales. Why? Why did that happen? Well, this client was a tour agency, and a snowstorm hit New York, I think, and 20 different flights were canceled. So that's why we lose 80% of sales that month, because a lot of people that were trying to arrive in Cancun, that's where we are, were unable to, because of a snowstorm that don't have anything to do with us, right? If we didn't ask the question, hey, did something happen? Did something, do you know the airport, hotels, how is everything going? And they didn't told us that, we weren't able to have that information. We all took decisions out of bad information or incomplete information in this case, right? So as a data analytics person, I normally try to use the 4 lenses to analyze information. That is historical, contextual, factual, and I'm missing one. Sorry, I'll remind it in a bit. But maybe this is a change that has been historical. Maybe this is a seasonality thing, that every single March we see a dive or we see an increase, right? Contextual, maybe something changed. Maybe our competitor do something. Maybe they launch a promotion that we weren't able to launch or something like that.
It's always when we have lists of things, I've totally done that before where I'm like, and our 3 C's are this, and I can't remember the third one.
Completely.
And that's totally fine. But you're right. Like, I mean, context is everything, because had you not asked or they hadn't told you that that was due to a snowstorm, then you might have like panicked and changed everything about the way your campaigns were set up, when really like nothing. I mean, that's like force majeure. That's like an act of God. Like, okay, it snowed.
There is nothing I can do.
Can do about that.
Completely.
Like, well, that was a bummer, but it is what it is. In the same way that sometimes, like, one of the clients I used to work for had like sometimes like a real outlier around sports and sporting events. Like, if that sporting team that year went to the Stanley Cup or went to the Super Bowl, and more people came to the restaurant or the bar to watch the games, and therefore they ordered food and they ordered special sandwiches or like limited time offers, like, then almost you look at that data and say, well, this month or quarter outperformed all the other ones by 30%. Well, that was due to something we couldn't expect, which is that our sports team won the Stanley Cup. And instead of hockey running, until April, it ran until June. And that was 2 extra months of time when people could come and buy sandwiches and beers at our place and were coming to watch the game. So like, there's all kinds of outliers like that like are outside of your control. Like, sometimes they're happy accidents and they benefit you. Sometimes they're unhappy accidents, like the snowstorm that canceled 80% of bookings. So yeah, it's kind of dependent on the industry that you're in. Some industries are more protected than others from sort of outside impacts and events like that. But I think, the pandemic was one that obviously had an outsized impact on a lot of different businesses, positively or negatively. Like, I was working for a CPG focused agency during the pandemic, and a lot of our CPG clients had better years during the pandemic because people weren't going to restaurants and they were inside and they were buying groceries and they were trying new foods at home, because that was the only entertainment they could get with food because they couldn't go out to eat. Meanwhile, restaurants really suffered. And of course, travel and tourism and hotels really suffered during that time. So sometimes you're just on the happy accident or unhappy accident side of these contextual situations.
Of course. And even maybe there is not a context, like a big act of God, as you said, but maybe even that specific channel is not working for that specific objective, right? Like we had another client that wanted to turn off their ad spend, for example, because it wasn't converting, it wasn't making any sales. Even though when he actually turned it off, we lose 80% of sales. Why? Because that specific channel was driving people into the funnel, but not converting them, right? So again, you have to have the context. You have to have all the information at your disposal to actually make the best decisions possible. Right. I just found out the 4 lenses that I was trying to say: historical, external, contextual, and internal. So historical is just specifically what does the history tell us? What is a seasonality thing? External is what changes out of our control what were made. Has technology changed? What has changed with our competitors or stuff like that? Contextual will be exactly that, like baselines. Are these numbers? Are these percentages? Stuff like that. And internal, what kind of a strategy shift have we made in the past 3 months, 6 months, what period, right? So you have to have the information available to make, the best decisions possible for your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're almost at our full hour. We haven't had any listeners raise their hands. That's okay. Sometimes we have these sessions and people want to listen in, especially if it's towards the end of their day and they're working out or they're making dinner. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that's joined us for this session. Gerardo, Pamela, Uriel, Sabrina, Eric, Victor, Raul, Amina, Paolo, Keaton, Julio, Douglas, Elizabeth, Alex, Isabella. Thank you all for joining. And we had a few people hop in and out. So just nice to see you all here in the room. And what should we leave people with as sort of a summary, Jorge, about the transition to GA4? If you tuned in partway through, like what's kind of the key takeaway for people to walk away with from this chat?
Sure. So I believe the key takeaways will be Google Analytics 3 is going to stop recollecting data on Saturday, July 1st. So what this means is that whenever you get to your job on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you won't be seeing anything in your analytics. And your Google Ads campaigns, for example, will stop receiving that information. So something has to be done. What has to be done is for you to implement Google Analytics 4, that is the new version. Actually can be easily implemented in a standard way to get basic information out of it. But the best thing of Google Analytics 4 is their personalization and customization. Therefore, you will have to have a little bit of knowledge on how to implement Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics 4 to take the best out of the platform and to take the best as you did in Google Analytics 3. Google Analytics 4 is changes because of the cookieless world we are living in, iOS 14, GDPR, CCPA, and stuff like that, where PII, privacy, personal identifiable information is kind of a big thing now. So Google Analytics 4 is made with that as a base, is made with AI in mind also. So it's a good change for you. It's going to be maybe a little bit of a learning curve, knowing how to use it and knowing how to get the information that you had on Google Analytics 3. But it's a good thing for you. You just need to implement it the correct way. Another key takeaway is that if you haven't made the change yet, you won't be able to compare your data. You won't be able to compare September this year to September last year, for example, because how the model has changed. You will be either downloading Excel files and trying to compare it, or we have as an agency have a custom solution where we can do a data warehousing, where we can dump everything into a database and give you the reports that you need. Always knowing that there is going to be a difference between Analytics 3 and Analytics 4 because on how the model for recollecting data was changed. So I believe those are the things that are the key takeaways. We might do another one of this in the near future on how to get into a custom report, trying to more on a deep dive or at least a dive on the platform and how to use it in a general way, right?
Yep, and I think for that one we would probably do something that's video based, so we have a visual aid because obviously this is a visual platform. But thanks for talking through just the general overview. And I know, for those that are not deeply steeped in this area, and I've seen a couple people pop in here that are in the media world, that are SEO specialists and media specialists, so they know, all the details of what you're talking about. But then there are also people that, know that they should be tracking their data or are tracking their data, but maybe are feeling a little trepidatious about where is my data going to go? Will I be able to access it? How will I be able to create reports in this new system? And maybe they don't feel as comfortable with it. So thanks for kind of breaking down, Jorge, everything from the technical to sort of the basic overview of how these systems are changing and what the new world of analytics is going to look like for us going forward with GA4. So super appreciate having you join me today. And again, thank you to our listeners. I hope you got some interesting information out of this session, and feel free to follow and connect with Jorge and I. And if you have any burning questions, pressing questions before Saturday about GA4, feel free to hit us up in the DMs, or you can send us an email. I don't know, Jorge, do you want to provide your email, or what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they have very specific questions to ask you?
Sure, of course. If someone has any questions at all or want to connect, we can connect here at LinkedIn, or you can shoot me an email at jorge@octopus.mx. And me or my team will contact you as soon as possible to get you for you to not be left out on the analytics or the data limbo, right, for the following weeks and months.
Perfect. Okay, and just to repeat, that's Jorge at octopus.mx. So yes, feel free to connect with Jorge. If you ask me, I'm not going to be able to answer any of your questions. I'm just being real with you, but I'm a good interviewer. And so thank you again
Thank
for
you,
allowing
Nora.
me to interview and ask you my stupid questions. I really
No,
appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me here. Thanks so much for the audience. Again, if someone has anything, any doubt or anything we can help you, please don't hesitate to reach us. We'll be glad to help.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Enjoy the holiday weekend and the transition to GA4. Let's go.
Thank you, everyone.
Soon. Bye, everyone.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.